So good evening, Galen. This is John Gluckman in Vancouver, and this is our regular Wednesday evening call. We have guests and different topics at different times. My co-hosts are Dr. Ken Pepperdine in Nanaimo, British Columbia, and Dr. Ron Borsima Sr. in Holland, Michigan. Our guest tonight will be Charles Mattox, who's had extensive experience with filmmaking, television production, etc., and being a chef and author. He'll tell you a lot more than I can. And so why don't we go to Ron for a minute? And Ron, why don't you get us started? Because it was your guest that you wanted to bring on, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, John. Charles and I have talked a couple of times on the phone and got to know a little bit about him and looked at his website and reviewed his very illustrious career, which has covered a lot of territory, probably a lot more than most of us. So I'm really not going to say a whole lot. I just want to make sure, Charles, you can go to your screen there in the lower left-hand corner, find the mute button and unmute yourself. And we'll be able to have a good conversation. If you would, kind of tell us your background. Maybe a lot of people listening tonight haven't had the opportunity to read all the information that was posted on Facebook, but give a little background and what brought you to Galen to bring the good message what we have.
Thank you. Glad to be here. I've had an extensive background in pretty much entertainment, and I'm the nephew of the late legendary Bob Marley, the reggae singer. So I started off in music, and from music, got into film and television, and I'm an Emmy Award nominated actor and all that good stuff. And I had an opportunity to move from Los Angeles to raise my son as a single father, and I got into becoming a celebrity chef, right? And my whole niche for that celebrity chef was to make healthy but affordable meals, and that did very well and took off, and with appearances on everything from CNN, Dr. Oz, The Today Show, Good Morning America, Martha Stewart, cookbooks and sauces and all of that kind of stuff. And then I was diagnosed during that time with diabetes. So it kind of was a space for me to look at my own health, look at the landscape of health and health care. And really that's how I, started on this whole diabetes and health mission, because, for me being who I was, there's nobody that looks like me in my space. So it was a very good place to be. So being able to be creative and come up with creative activations in a space that is not that creative. Diabetes isn't. There's no new marketing under the sun for diabetes. It's the same stuff. So when you come into a situation where you can bring new creative ideas that push the envelope but are still fantastic. It was a good space. So, one of the activations I did was the first ever diabetes RV tour, right? I was in Walmart parking lot one day and I saw the big red bus, and I thought, wow, why isn't there one like this for diabetes? There's almost 500 million people with diabetes, but there should be something out here like this. So I teamed up with a big biopharmaceutical company that worked with diabetic wounds, and we were able to put an RV like that out on the road and travel around the country and educate people on diabetes. So my passion has always been, the last couple of years, of course, on health. I've got a television show that's on TV right now on Discovery Life, based on reversing or diabetes. Not eliminating it, but reversing, changing the path, changing the outcome of people who are living with diabetes and other chronic conditions such as hypertension, cholesterol, weight issues, whatever it may be. I've got a documentary that's coming out next month that's based on me and my diabetes, but going around the world. So, when I was approached about, working with the company and the product, of course, if there's something that can help people in their diabetes journey, it's something that always kind of lifts me up and says, you know what, not only do I want to be able to entertain the people, educate the people, but also give them something that they can take home. Because every day I get people who reach out to me and say, Charles, I've got diabetes. What can I do? And, having a product that you can share with them that works and is tested and proven is something that means a lot to me.
It's interesting you bring that up. In fact, just before we came on the call, I was listening to the news and watching the commercials, which are always more interesting to me than most of the programming today. But they were talking about a specific diabetes drug, and I don't recall what it was. I always listen to what they're saying about it. But what they were talking about is managing my diabetes. And your documentary talks about reversing it. So we're talking two different approaches to diabetes when we're listening to the commercials for drugs to manage your diabetes, not to eliminate it, but you're talking about how do we reverse it. And that's always of great interest to me, and how one gets to that point themselves to find out why. What can I personally do? So if you'd share, what was your interest? What really got you excited about Emulin? I mean, you talked about the science, but why you personally?
Well, and that's a good point. I remember when I first started this, you would get attacked if you had said anything about reversing diabetes. I mean, literally. I mean, my first dip into the pool, literally 8 years ago. I mean, I was literally attacked by even that kind of thought. It's changed now, and that's a beautiful thing. You have major companies, a company called Verta Health, Amita, who are that's all they do. They raise big money in venture capital, and they're out here proving that diabetes can be reversed. Now, if you look up the definition of reverse, it means to slow down or stop the forward progress. So we're not saying that you're going to be rid of diabetes, right? Obviously, especially with type 2, if you go back to the same type of lifestyle, because it's a lifestyle condition, right? Disease. So if you go back to the same lifestyle, you're going to put yourself in a situation where you can be affected, and those numbers can go back up, whether it's, like I said, the blood pressure, the cholesterol, or the diabetes. So, being to a point now where we can, talk about reversing diabetes, even the name of the television show. I mean, there were a couple of, magazines and newspapers that would literally go in on that word reverse. I remember doing an interview and they just could not stop asking me about the word reversed. And I'm just like, you're missing the point. So now we are at the point where it's okay to talk about reversing diabetes. And I think, once again, having a product that works in our overall lifestyle, because you have to have people who want to meet you halfway. So when you have someone who comes and says, listen, I want to change my lifestyle, I want to change my condition, I want to change the outcome, and now you're able to give them, whether it's dietary advice, whether it's exercise advice, and also supplementation advice. Supplements are key. People don't realize that, what really kills us is not so much the diabetes, but the inflammation and the oxidative stress. So being able to have a product from Igalin that can really help people in their day-to-day battle is key. So that, that's I talked to Dr. Ray Jen today, this morning, and had a good conversation with him, because what my focus is, and after that conversation is I want to get this to the people, because I believe that the people are the soldiers, and if you have a strong soldier system, you're going to win that battle. So I believe that, getting this into the hands of tens of thousands of people that can take this product every day and have something to look forward to in their day-to-day battle of life and of health is key. So that's why I'm excited to be a part of it. And, you guys have been amazing. Dory and the rest of the team have been fantastic,
Ken, do you have any questions you'd like to ask? Maybe you can unmute yourself.
I have got a couple of comments. I went over your, some of the material, Charles, and it was great. And I think we've seen diabetes so medicalized, and of course the commercials for the medications on diabetes more or less say give up, right? Don't try. You caught something, you're stuck. And I think having a spokesman like yourself is fabulous, because it's going to help to lead people to another point of view. And what we talk a lot about is a paradigm shift, a shift of consciousness where you see that something can be done. And I know personally I've had a shift where I see that for-profit entities don't care whether they poison me or not. They want the money. And I think it takes a grassroots approach and people like yourself to really bring it to light. So I really applaud what you're doing.
And to add to that, I think that, what motivates me is passion for the people. So that's why I work as hard as I do, because I want to save lives. So even with teaming up with you guys, it's really about getting this into people's hands and giving them an opportunity to live, because you're right, it's all about pushing medication, and you go to the doctor's office and every time you leave it's a different medication. People don't have a clue of why their numbers are going up. They don't have a clue of the medication they're taking. They're very ignorant toward that fact. And as we know, the medication is killing us too as well. They don't change their diets. They don't change the way they live. They don't exercise. It's just take the medication and that should do the trick. So being able to, I think, in some of the things that I'd like to do is, number one is, and I talked to Dory about this, getting a younger, fresher face to the team here. New, fresh ideas so that we're able to reach a younger market who not only wants to help themselves, but help their parents and their grandparents. I think that's key. Also, once again, allowing the people who need this product an opportunity to be able to say, this is something that needs to be in my arsenal of better health. So, it's an exciting time. I think right now is the time. Not tomorrow, not the day after tomorrow. Today is the day to make some exciting things happen. And, I'm excited to be a part of the team, and I hope everybody else is. I don't see any smiling faces over there when I'm talking, but I want to see some smiles and some laughter and some joy over here,
One of the things I had an experience with a diabetic patient, and it was a really interesting experience. She started on Amulin and went house sitting, forgot to take her insulin. And she was there for 2 days and she thought, well, I'll just go without the insulin and I'll double up my Amulin. And she had to call me when she got back and say, you know what? My blood sugar didn't go up very much with that. And one of the things that I thought is that every diabetic should have some in their emergency kit should they not be able to get insulin. And it should be just something to save your life if there's an earthquake or a hurricane or something like that.
It's powerful. Like I said, I've been taking it, obviously, and I feel fantastic. I've lost a couple of pounds. I don't know if it's just, the mind here working together, but it makes me feel good realizing and knowing that I have something that I can take along with some of the other supplements that I have that will help stabilize my blood sugar. So it's an important key. And once again, I think if we work together to kind of show people how they can better themselves and give them the tools, because it's really about those tools, making them feel better. Remember, this is not, it's number one, it starts off an emotional journey, right? We have to change the behavior. We have to let people understand why they need to make some changes in their life. So this ride is if we look at the success of Reverse, I mean, we've had people who've come off insulin on the show, who are insulin dependent. We've had people who have lost over 66 pounds, but what we did was start with the mental. So we had a lot of that featured on the show. So that's the same thing that I look forward to do, is really kind of, you know, looking for people who are ready to meet you halfway, and then giving them the tools. And I think that we have something exciting here, and I look forward to jazzing it up and spicing it up. All right.
So, guys, I don't know why when you were speaking, Charles, you weren't in the picture rather than Ken, but whatever it is, that's just the technology and the internet.
I had Charles on my screen.
Oh, did you? I had you.
Yeah, I did too.
Oh my God, that's ugly.
No, don't
An
worry about
ugly
it.
thing.
So, Charles, I want to, you know, if you don't mind, I can do a quick screen share just to show people the extent of the work that you've done in the media, so that they can see, or else I can just in the chat put in the website for people to go look on their own time. One of the things that caught my interest when I read about your work is this new interest you have with the CRPS or CRPS.
CRPS, yeah.
CRPS. And I talked to Dr. Ken about that, because I'm no longer in practice. It's been 10 years since I've dealt with patients. But I remember seeing one or two cases that looked like that. And I bet you that a lot of the people that are on this call don't have any idea what that is. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about your interest in it. Where did it come from? And this movie that you've just produced about that, because it's a very, very, and what I'll do is I'll do a screen share to just show some pictures of what that looks like while you talk. Is that okay with you?
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, all right.
CRPS is complex regional pain syndrome. It was labeled as RSD.
There's somebody with a lot of noise in the background. Let me shut everybody else off except you here. Mute and mute. Okay, good. All right, keep going.
And it's called the suicide disease, and because they said it may not kill you, but you'll wish you were dead. So my mother is affected by CRPS, and once again, I knew nothing about it. It was very shocking to me, and I wanted to tell her story, which started to just expand to understand the many stories around the world of people who are dealing with this terrible pain. And the thing with this is that it can happen to any one of us at any time, and it's like literally living with fire and with glass in your body. So it's a terrible, terrible, terrible condition that none of us would want to have. So, you know, that kind of opened me up into the pain community too as well, which obviously, you know, there are some other products that, you know, that are offered that I think that would be a benefit to some of those people too as well who suffer with CRPS. So yeah, right there you see that, and remember, this is a terrible, terrible pain that these people are living in. I mean, literally, I've seen people take their lives. I've had people who reach out to me on social media who are ready to take their lives, and you know, I don't know them, but I'll try to comfort them, because I don't know if it's a gift to my curse, but I feel like the Mahatma Gandhi of diabetes and health. So it's something that none of us would want, and fearful if any of our children or loved ones were to come, be diagnosed with this condition. So, once again, that's just a part of the overall mission, and I think that that's kind of what brings the credibility to some of the things that I'm doing right now as far as health, and which I think can benefit Galen in really reaching the people and having a message and a messenger that really truly cares about saving lives. So I think that's key.
So Charles, in your interaction so far with Dr. Rajan and Dr. Joe Aarons and the Climax product, Dr. Scolio, do you have a sense that anything that we have between these two products might make a difference for these people that are suffering with this kind of condition?
Well, the thing is remember, a lot of these people suffer with other conditions. So you have people who have CRPS, who have diabetes. You have people who have HIV, who have diabetes. You have people who have a lot of issues going on, and obviously that I think that definitely the Climax product. And I'm not sure if this would be a good product for them, but I think it may be. But definitely, I think that a combination of what we have here can be life-changing to millions of people. And we're sitting on something that I believe can really affect and help millions and millions of people. Getting that out to them is key. Getting this out to the people who need the product is key, because I feel that if you get as many people on this daily and taking these products daily, it'll turn into a successful business because the word will spread.
So as you can see, I've moved to the to your media page and showing some of the accolades that you've won for some of your presentations, your documentaries in particular. So can you tell us about some of these amazing documentaries that you've done?
Yeah, like I said, obviously the first one was the one called Trial by Fire.
I think I'm going to it now.
Yeah, and that was seen also on PBS. The Diabetic You will be out in March. We have another one that we're going to be working on called The World of Pain, which is going to expand on mental, physical, emotional pain that people are suffering with around the world. Obviously, if we look at the world right now, the world is truly, and so I think that being able to kind of tell some stories and find some solutions of people who are dealing with issues can be fun.
Sorry, I've got some chatter in the background. My mother is talking to my helper, and it's distracting. Okay, so that shows some of the productions that you have done and are currently involved in, and then you've got the television work as well. So what's going on that scene right now?
I used to have a show based in the Caribbean. It was called Conversations in the Kitchen. Fantastic show. It was based on health, healthy meals, but we would interview a lot of celebrities and big name guests, and they would be able to kind of cook in their kitchen and share some of their dishes and talk about their lives. But obviously the biggest thing that we have is Reverse. And, Reverse is basically a marketing tool to reach the people, and also a marketing tool for companies that have products or services to be able to touch the lives of those who need the information. I mean, we're sitting on a game-changing platform that I truly believe is, going to be a major tool to help save some lives, educate people, and also increase bottom line in a lot of companies. So it's exciting. It's an exciting time, and I'm glad to be a part of it. We're building an amazing team. We've got some fantastic new doctors on board who all believe in reversing diabetes. And we just pulled Dr. Jason Fong, who's actually in Canada. He's a very popular, world-renowned doctor, and a couple other well-known people too as well. And it's going to be a powerful situation, and look forward to hopefully exposing the product on the show and in some form or fashion, or at least allowing the audience to know that that I'm using the product.
So between Ron and Ken, do you have some other questions before we open it up to some questions from the?
Hey, Connie.
I'm good.
I've got a couple of comments. Just prior to this, I reviewed CRPS, and I've had a few patients with it, and my God, how they suffer. It is horrid. And I noticed that they have high levels of interleukin 1 and 2 and tumor necrosis factor alpha, which I'm getting my names mixed up here. Emulant has been shown to reduce the levels of TNF alpha. So that there's hope there. And the other thing, I think there's a high correlation with stress in that person's life because it stimulates the sympathetic part of the nervous system. And the patients that I was treating, we were dealing with both stress and doing some work on their spine to try to rebalance the sympathetic parasympathetic chatter. So there is hope, and it would be wonderful to see that carry on as well.
Thousand people, almost 7,000 people on that page, and they are very receptive to when I share something with them. So that I'd like to share that too as well.
Yes.
Good. Well, listen. So why don't we open it up for questions? Are you open to that, Charles?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So if you want to ask Charles a question, go ahead and just unmute yourself on the bottom left-hand corner. Just get that little red line out of the off the microphone, and you're on. Who's first?
I've got a question, if I can butt in.
Who's that?
It's Julie Barrington.
Hi, Julie. Go ahead.
My son's 32 years of age. He was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 24. Just looking at those pictures that you screen shared previously, I've never actually heard of CRPS, but he has this thing where his ankles actually swell up really badly. And it looks similar to that, but I've never ever heard of that before, and it's never been mentioned previously when he's had doctor's appointments.
Yeah.
Is this something that's related to diabetes?
No, it's not. It's not related to diabetes, but it can go undiagnosed. Most cases of CRPS actually take somewhere between 1 to 5 years because most doctors don't even know what CRPS is. So a lot of times people will even go to the hospital and they don't know what's wrong with them, and they walk out thinking at times it's some kind of other condition, and they're given medicine for other conditions. So it does take being able to know what the condition is and then be able to have that in your repertoire to be able to say, could this be an option for whatever they're dealing with is something that we were hoping to spread, and we did spread to millions of people.
Charles, Dr. Ken told me earlier when we were speaking about this that he thinks that the previous name was RSD.
Yeah, it was RSD, reflex
sympathetic dystrophy.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Julie, if you are concerned about the appearance of your son's ankles or legs, and you talk to your doctor, ask him whether he knows that name, reflex sympathetic dystrophy, or CRPS is complex regional pain syndrome.
Okay.
Complex regional pain syndrome. Yeah. Now, usually that manifests on one side versus both. It's usually unilateral rather than bilateral. Is that true, Charles?
Yeah.
Okay. So if your son is having both, it might be a lymphatic drainage problem with lymphedema or something like that. So if he's had any kind of disruption to his lymph drainage system, that could be part of that problem as well. And if that's what it is, then rebounding is known as the best, thing that you can personally do for that, if that's what it is.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll check with the doctor anyway.
All right. Yeah.
Another consideration is catching it early, because medical interventions, if they try surgeries, if they try various aggressive medical interventions for CRPS, is like throwing gasoline on a fire. Yeah, they make it worse. So, it's great, Charles, that you're raising awareness of that, because so many people have been made worse by well-intentioned people.
Okay, Julie, anybody else? Can't believe nobody else has questions for this knowledgeable man.
I'm just getting ready.
Brian, go for it.
Just a question, Charles, with the CRPS. Is it based on inflammation? Or, like, in other words, can, like, overdosing on emulant, can that take it down?
No, I'm not sure. It's not based on inflammation. It's
okay.
Obviously it's I think some of the doctors probably know more than me, but I want to say it's almost a nervous system type of condition. Almost, obviously it's if you think about it, we can be in a car accident and, years later, our brain may still have some pain. These people, that's why they try to reset. They use ketamine, which is a horse tranquilizer, or not a tranquilizer, a horse sedative. And they use that to almost reset the brain. That's why with CRPS, at times they put people into a ketamine coma to kind of reset the brain. And it does help a little bit, but it doesn't, most of the time, it doesn't take away the whole situation. So, the doctors probably can expand a little bit more on that than me. So.
Right.
Sympathetic nervous system controls a lot to do with blood vessels and dilation of blood vessels, constriction of blood vessels, all of the things that you don't think about doing, right? So that's your autonomic nervous system. It beats your heart, it dilates your blood, it dilates your pupils, it helps secrete digestive juices. And when that gets out of hand, you don't have personal control over it, because that's the automatic part of your nervous system. And so it is a horrible disease that way. And I think the research is ongoing to try to figure out what some of the factors are. Certainly trauma is often begins that. But it could be trauma to the right person or the wrong person at the wrong time. It's sort of the perfect storm of things.
Okay. Good. Thank you, Ken.
Yeah.
Any other questions, folks? We've got a couple of more minutes to go. No? Okay.
If I can say one more thing in regards, Charles, you were talking about the diabetes. In the last 7 weeks, I've brought 2 people in that are type 1 diabetics. And in that time, they have reduced their insulin by over 50%. And both of them are from Edmonton, Alberta. And they can't believe, because they have to pay for their insulin, and it's saving them almost $100 per month just on the cost of the insulin.
And that reduction in insulin is life-saving.
Big time. I'm a type 2 diabetic. And I've tried to talk to my doctor about it, and he just looks at me and laughs and said, "Get away from me." Doesn't want to have anything to do with it. But I'm used to it. I torment him. So.
And how was your A1C?
It was 6.7 last month. It's a little higher than what I'd like it. I'd like it down around 5.7 to 5.8. But I had a good Christmas. And I'm also a cook. or chef, you know, so
So
I know.
Thanks for bringing that around. So Charles, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your cooking expertise and what you're doing in the sense of publications and how we may benefit from some of that information.
Definitely. Obviously, you know, I've got cookbooks out. Some of the cookbooks are diabetes. One of them is from, my last one is actually from the American Diabetes Association, or I've teamed up with the American Diabetes Association. So great cookbook, and those recipes have to be thoroughly vetted. They're definitely healthy but affordable recipes. I've got a children's book too as well that kind of talks about diabetes and kind of working with parents and children to let them know and take away any stigmas that come from seeing a child inject themselves with you know, any insulin or anything like that. So it's we've got some powerful stuff. And my cooking, of course, I'm Caribbean fusion since I'm from Jamaica, and you know, it's really about taking what we have and making it healthy, not taking away what people have, because that's the thing when you talk about dietary changes as well. A lot of people think that, you know, you want to go from one extreme to the next, right? So you go from bad food to eating cardboard and vegetables, you know, and it's really about taking what you have and making those simple changes. So if you're Latin, and, you know, let's face it, we're not going to take certain things away from Latin people, right? They're going to stick to what they like, whether it's rice and beans and you know, foods that are filled with a lot of sodium and things like that. But if you show them a different way to eat it, the same thing with Caribbean people. You know, we love our curry goat and our jerk chicken and all those kind of things like that. So just giving them different options so that they can, you know, whether portion control is a key factor, but giving them different options so they can still eat the same way, but smaller portions and healthier portions. And because you'll see people who will revert back to what they know once they tried the extreme, right? And we know that most doctors aren't trained in nutrition, so I think that's where we kind of, you know, have an upper hand, where we can once again show them not only a dietary change, but a supplement, you know, addition to their overall health. And I think that's key. I think that you know, I think that there's a room for that even in our Galen, where we can, you know, look at the supplement additions, but also a mental and a dietary change too as well. You know?
So Charles, just a point, probably the reason that I didn't see you come on the screen and I kept seeing Brian's ugly mug is probably you're not speaking as loud as you might. I've had one person ask if you can project a little bit more.
I saw that. I've got to get
okay. So before we wind up, perhaps in the chat, if you can just go to the chat at the bottom of your screen and maybe type in the website where people might be able to get more information about your books or order them if that's appropriate. Good, that's great. So that, for those of you that are looking in the chat right now, it's http no s : Charles Mattox, the full name. It's not X, it's OCKS.com. So http://charlesmattox.com. Thank you. Then just a couple of announcements before we wind up. On next week's call, the 28th, the topic is going to be stress. Dr. Ken and Ron wanted to have a full session about stress and how that affects everybody, what you could do about it, how you can ease some of life's tensions and improve many medical conditions by reducing stress. So that's next week on the 28th. And then on the 7th of March, the topic will be exercise. That's Dr. Ken's favorite topic with his clients. And I'm sure that Charles would support that part of the mission as well.
Yeah.
So we've covered detoxification last week. We've covered, Charles, today. We're going to cover stress. We're going to cover exercise. And, it's been a whole year since I've been doing these calls. And I'm looking for a way to kind of hand these calls over to other people. So I know that Ron wants to keep on working with this on a regular weekly basis. Ken, not so much. He's got many other passions like kayaking and sailing and a practice and a wife. And so if you guys know of another doctor or another medical, or maybe even Charles wants to be involved with this, we're looking for somebody else to be committed on Wednesday nights at 5 o'clock to interview people and, share information, whatever. I've given it a year, and I'd like to, within 2 to 3 weeks, move on to other things. So keep that in mind and send your suggestions, and let's go from there. Any last comments from you, Charles?
I would love to be a part of that. I think that
let's PM me and we'll talk. Okay?
you can't hear me?
Oh, I hear you fine.
All right. yeah. So I'd love to be a part of that.
So
hey, Sarah, how are you?
Who?
Sarah.
Okay, good. So we'll do it offline. We'll do it off this call. We'll talk. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Any last comments, Ken or Ron?
Yes, I owe an apology to Ron because I mentioned that thing about exercise to you without checking it through with Ron.
I'm sure.
So Ron, feel free to, yeah, okay. We'll come off next time. Hey, why don't we wear tank tops?
Yeah, there you go.
You too, John.
Not likely.
Hey, I'd like to ask one question, even for what would some of the folks who are on like to see differently, or what would they like? What would they like? What would Sarah? I'm seeing Sarah right now. What would you like to see, and some of the others who are here? Julie, what would you like, Julie?
Just why don't you guys write down your suggestions in the chat line, because I'll be able to copy that, to have that as template for future calls. Okay.
Okay.
I
All
want
right.
some of those Caribbean restaurant recipes. Food is a great subject, and people are kind of food impaired, especially some of us North Americans.
It is.
All right.
Can you hear? Is everybody leaving? I'd like to say something, since I was
Late.
brought into this.
Go ahead, Sarah. I've got a few seconds.
Oh, good. So I guess, my question is as you're launching this out into your communities, and, you all are doctors and you can talk these medical conditions, but this is a multi-level marketing product. And so I guess health education would be the top of my list on how, everyday people talk to everyday people about your product, because it's a lot of responsibility. When you put it into a multi-level marketing sort of platform, that's a huge amount of responsibility. And so I'm just curious, how you're facilitating those conversations.
That's an excellent question, and it's a recurring challenge in our industry. Dory will have a lot of information about that. Dory, why don't you pipe in on that topic, because you've been around a long time in the industry, and you know the challenges with education about health.
Yeah. So these meetings are for people that are in, and they're general education forums, but they're not things that you would approach people and talk to them about. I always talk about the foundational elements, what Emulin brings. And I talk about facts, that people are consuming way more sugar. So generally, as those that have heard me before, I always use questions. So a question might be, wouldn't you agree that children today are consuming way too much sugar? wait till they say yes, and say, I bet you didn't know, but at the turn of the century, the average North American was consuming only 18 pounds of sugar per person per year. Do you know what they're consuming today? And you let them answer that question. Now, I just did this in front of 1,700 people, and it worked like a charm. I say, do you realize that the average person is consuming 180 pounds of sugar per person per year? And I asked everybody to show their hands who would accept my challenge the next time they go into the grocery store to look at the labels of the products they're buying and see what the content of sugar and carbohydrates is on those particular products. And I also will say, I bet you would agree with me that sugar is not good for you in those kinds of quantities. And they'll always say yes. Well, we have the world's first patented carbohydrate manager, and we can make the claim that it helps control inflammation. So I will say something along the lines that sugar and carbohydrates are a direct cause of the increase in the inflammatory condition of people. And were you aware that excess inflammation and the reduction of that excess inflammation can alleviate conditions? And I'll always make the statement, Emulin doesn't treat or cure any disease, but if it can reduce inflammation, a Nobel Prize was awarded many years ago that proved that if you reduce or eliminate inflammation, chronic conditions and the severity of the chronic conditions will be relieved. That's what Emulin does. It's kind of like a way to take a all-natural product that was once present in the fruits and vegetables that we ate, and now you can have it by simply taking 2 capsules a day, and you can protect your children. Sarah, you want to protect your children. Wouldn't you agree? So it's just a natural conversation by getting them to agree on the premises of the challenge. And then what I say is, and we also have another product, if it's appropriate. I don't try and oversell the second product, but in the forum I was in, I say, today's fruits, vegetables, pastries, all of those things. Just hang on a sec. Yeah, could you take that away from him? They can't. My dog was chewing on a bottle. So in today's world, most of the foods we eat are devoid of nutrition. And what we have in Clamex is a super nutrition, a nutritional supplement that has clinical studies that prove its efficacy, that prove that it has the ability to affect all parts of the body, and in particular, boost the immune system. So here's the analogy that I would like you to think about. Imagine that your immune system is an army, and that army immediately hits a great wall. I call that wall inflammation. The army's there, but it's just fighting to get through the wall. It can't get to the root cause of the challenge. But when you take Emulin, that wall is immediately knocked down, because that's what inflammation is. When you take Clamex on a regular basis, you boost your army. Instead of going in there with bows and arrows and swords, you're going in there with A1 Abrams and tanks. You've got an aircraft carrier that's flying in jets, and you're able to fly in and directly hit and work the immune system without having to first get past that wall. And so these two in combination are the ultimate knockout punch. And that's how I sort of came up with that video that I posted on Facebook. But that's how I talk about it. In simple terms, I try and draw pictures of a wall, letting them understand without getting complex and doctorish. And that seems to work very well. So that's how I do it. Questions? Questions that require a yes answer. Very simple.
Now, I will refer you guys back to a video that Dory and I did. Oh, it's going back about 8 or 10 months ago when he was a guest on the call. And if you want to find it, it'll be archived in Debbie Ward's Everything STEM Tech and whatever. Just go there, you'll find it. And Dory did a master class on how to ask questions, how to interview people, such that they would tell you exactly how they need to be sold, how they need to be brought into the program. So Dory's a master at this, and I'm glad you piped in. Any other questions at all before we shut down tonight? Okay, look for this recording to be up later on this evening on all your favorite Facebook group pages, and then it'll also be on YouTube at Debbie Ward's channel. And I think it's a wrap. And I'm going to stop the recording, but you guys are welcome to stay on and chat amongst yourselves. So the recording.
Thanks, Charles. Thanks, John. Thanks, Docs. Great.
Thanks, Charles. It was great to meet you.
Yeah, you
So you guys can hang around. There's no rush.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I've unmuted all of you so you can all chat at once.
Good night, all.
Good night, guys.
Good night, John Boyd.
Australia.
And tell your mother good night too, Brian.
He's looking for me, I know that. Just so you know, Charles, my mother is 92 and has dementia. And so this time of the evening is always a real complicated issue with something called sundowner syndrome. If you haven't heard of that, just look it up in Google. Really crazy stuff. Anyway, let's get together away from here and we'll figure out how to include you in future calls. Okay, Charles? I don't hear you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, just reach me on Messenger on Facebook because we've talked every week.
I will.
Thank you very much, you guys. Everyone who contributed tonight. That was fantastic.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was exciting.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I can't wait to watch more.
Do we not do these with regular distributors?
Well, this is not a doctor's call, Charles. There's only myself and 2 other doctors. The rest is regular distributors. So
Okay.
this is a distributor call.
Okay. Can we? What about one where we have potential people who want to be distributors?
Well, everybody was welcome to invite guests tonight. So, the message went out to invite your guests. So there are some. I can't hear you.
I said, good to know. Good to know.
Okay. All right. Okay, guys. I think it's a wrap. I'm going to shut this down because there's lots of noise. Good night.
All right.
Have a great night, you guys. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye, everybody.
See you soon.